My name is Kim. I'm 24 years old and I'm from Hà Giang. I'm an office worker and I'm still single. I'm not very well now because I'm sick. This is a photo of my family. It's quite old, but it's quite old. It's quite old, but it's very meaningful to me. It's quite old, but it's very meaningful to me. It's always in my bag. My brother's name is Nam. He's on the left of the photo. He's 27 years old and he's an accountant. He's 27 years old and he's an accountant for a company. He's 27 years old and he's an accountant for a company. Humorous. He's very intelligent. He's very intelligent and humorous. He's very intelligent and humorous. He's married and his wife's name is Mai. She's next to him in a photo. She's next to him in a photo. She's from Bắc Giang. She's very friendly and sociable. She's very friendly and sociable. She's afraid of dogs. She's afraid of dogs. She's afraid of dogs. My brother isn't afraid of dogs, but he's afraid of girls. My brother isn't afraid of dogs, but he's afraid of girls. My brother isn't afraid of dogs. My brother isn't afraid of dogs, but he's afraid of girls. My brother isn't afraid of dogs, but he's afraid of girls. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts, but I'm afraid of snakes and mice. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts, but I'm afraid of snakes and mice. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts, but I'm afraid of snakes and mice. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts, but I'm afraid of snakes and mice. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts. I'm not afraid of dogs and ghosts, but I'm afraid of snakes and mice. My brother My brother's interested in. My brother's interested in cars. My brother's interested in cars. But he isn't interested in clothes. My brother's interested in cars. But he isn't interested in clothes. My brother's interested in car. My brother's interested in cars. But he isn't interested in clothes. His wife's interested in clothes. His wife's interested in clothes, but she isn't interested in cars. I'm not interested in cars. I'm not interested in cars or clothes. 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 I'm only interested in football. I'm only interested in football. My father's name is Tuân. My father's name is Tuân, and my mother's name is Huệ. There's on the left of the photo. There's on the left of the photo. There's on the left. There's on the left of the photo. They're 50. They're 50. They're 54. They're 54 years old, and they're both teachers. 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 They're very careful. They're very careful and reliable. 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 They're very careful. They're very careful and reliable. They're very careful and very careful and reliable. They're 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 interested in Vietnamese films. They're interested in Vietnamese film. They're interested in Vietnamese films, but they aren't interested in Korean films. They're interested in Vietnamese films, but they aren't interested. They're interested in Vietnamese films, but they aren't interested in Korean films. They're interested in Vietnamese films, but 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 they're interested in Vietnamese films, but they aren't interested in Korean films. They aren't afraid of hot weather. They aren't afraid of hot weather. They aren't afraid of hot weather, but they aren't afraid of cold weather. They aren't afraid of hot weather, but they're afraid of cold weather. They aren't afraid of hot weather, but they're afraid of cold weather. 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 Afraid of hot weather, but they're afraid of cold weather. They aren't afraid of hot weather, but they're afraid of cold weather. They aren't afraid of hot weather, but they're afraid of cold weather. They aren't afraid of hot weather, but they're afraid of cold weather. They aren't afraid of hot weather, but they're afraid of cold weather. They aren't afraid of hot weather, but they're afraid of cold weather. They aren't afraid of hot weather, but they're afraid of cold weather. It's 9 p.m. and we're still at home because the slate. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late and it's very cold outside. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late and it's very cold outside. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late and it's very cold outside. It's 9 p.m. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late and it's very cold outside. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late and it's very cold outside. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late because it's late It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late and it's very cold outside. It's 9 p.m. and we are still at home because it's late and it's very cold outside. We are very happy together now. We are very happy together now. We are very happy together now.